Now, alleged Underworld boss Nafiz Modack appears to have had more bodyguards than President Cyril Ramaphosa. He told the court how he traveled in convoy with bulletproof vehicles and anything between 15 and 20 bodyguards. This, he says, is because of the threats on his life by members of the anti-gang unit, as well as his Underworld rivals vying for control of security in nightclubs and entertainment establishments.
On September 18, 2020, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Kinnear steps out of his Bishop Lavis home. It's just past 3 in the afternoon. His wife is inside making coffee. Then the shots explode. 18 bullets tear through the afternoon quiet. The veteran detective, the man who'd spent years hunting Cape Town's most dangerous criminals, crumples beside his Toyota Corolla. Blood pools on the driveway. His phone, still in his pocket, has been pinged over 2,000 times in recent weeks. Someone was watching. Someone was waiting. This assassination shook South Africa to its core. But to understand why Charles Kinnear died that day, you need to know about the man prosecutors say ordered his execution, Nafiz Modack, Cape Town's alleged underworld emperor, a man who claimed to feed the poor while allegedly running a criminal empire worth millions, a debt collector who somehow ended up controlling 80% of the city's nightclub security, a businessman earning 20,000 rand a month who mysteriously paid over R1 million in bribes. This is the story of how one man allegedly built a shadow kingdom in Cape Town's underworld, and how his empire came crashing down in a storm of bullets, corruption, and betrayal. To understand Nafiz Modack, you first need to understand Cape Town's underbelly. The Cape Flats, Khayelitsha, Gugulethu, Nyanga, these aren't just neighborhoods. They're the scars left by apartheid, overcrowded townships where poverty and desperation created perfect breeding grounds for gangs. The hard livings, the sexy boys, the terrible West Siders, these aren't street corner crews. They're sophisticated syndicates with tentacles reaching from taxi ranks to construction sites to CBD nightclubs. In this menacing shadow economy, protection money flows like blood through veins. Businesses don't have a choice, pay up or face the consequences. And the cops? A probe found over 2,000 police-held firearms had been illegally distributed to Cape Town gangs through corrupt officers. The line between law enforcement and lawbreaker had become dangerously blurred. Into this chaos stepped Nafiz Modack. On paper, he was a debt collector, a private investigator. But prosecutors paint a different picture, a man who saw opportunity in the violence, who understood that in Cape Town's underworld, fear was currency and corruption was the exchange rate. By 2017, Modack had his fingers in a lucrative pie, Cape Town's nightlife. The city's clubs were gold mines, but they came with a problem: drugs. The previous security overlord, a gangster called Mark Liffman, had controlled these venues for years. But Modack saw an opening. He approached club owners with an irresistible pitch: drug-free venues, better security, no more problems. He wasn't lying about the security. Modack hired the same bouncers Liffman once employed and paid them more. Within months, he'd negotiated deals with 80% of Cape Town's nightclubs. The clubs stayed drug-free, as promised. But there was a catch. Businesses that refused his protection found themselves facing threats. Windows would break, employees would disappear. The message was clear: Modack's way or no way. On December 15, 2017, everything nearly came crashing down. Police spotted Modack in a high-speed chase through Cape Town's streets. In the car with him, Colin Boyson, brother of Jerome Donkey Boyson, leader of the notorious Sexy Boys gang. The charges: extortion, intimidation, running an alleged nightclub protection racket. It should have been the end. But Cape Town's courts work in mysterious ways. All charges were dropped. Modack walked free, and his empire only grew stronger. April 2018 brought the first major bloodshed. Pete Mahalik, a high-profile advocate who'd once represented Modack, was gunned down outside his children's school. The assassination sent shockwaves through Cape Town's legal community. Why would someone kill Modack's own lawyer? The answer, according to prosecutors, was simple and chilling: revenge. Mihalik had also represented Modack's enemies. In the underworld's twisted logic, that made him a traitor. A state witness would later quote Modack's cold reasoning: "Mihalik was my lawyer. There was a ransom of 3 million rand." The message to Cape Town's underworld was clear: cross Nafiz Modack, and not even the law can protect you. But Mihalik's death was just the beginning. Modack had bigger targets in mind. Jerome Donkey Boyson's lawyer, William Booth, became the next name on the hit list. Between September and December 2019, multiple assassination attempts were made on Booth's life. The attempts were almost comedic in their failure. In one, the hired gunman got stoned while waiting to ambush Booth, and one fell into a deep hole. But the intent was deadly serious. A 3 million rand bounty hung over Booth's head. Then came a case of mistaken identity that revealed the true scope of Modack's alleged reach. On July 9, 2019, retired Hawks officer Nicholas Heerschop was shot dead in Melkbos-Strand. He wasn't the intended target. The hitman had confused him with his son, an active Hawks officer investigating Modack's network. An innocent man died because his son wore a badge. While bodies piled up on Cape Town's streets, Modack was playing a different game with the police. Through a middleman named Mohammed Hanwar, over 1.3 million rand flowed toward what Modack claimed were bribes for high-ranking officers. The biggest target? Major General Jeremy Veery, former head of detectives in the Western Cape. Modack allegedly paid for a Toyota Fortuner worth 1 million rand, claiming it was Veery's bribe payment. Cash changed hands through Hanwar's wife, Caitlin Bowen. Bank records show the money trails. But here's the twist: Veery never received a cent. The general later testified in court, calling the whole scheme a long con. So where did the money go? That question haunts this case. Was Modack conned by his own middleman, or was this elaborate paper trail meant to frame innocent cops? The truth remains buried in Cape Town's underworld. Meanwhile, Modack's security empire expanded beyond nightclubs. Shell companies sprouted like weeds, security firms, car dealerships, all perfect for laundering extortion proceeds. The crown jewel of this financial fraud? A family-run scheme that allegedly claimed 46 million rand in bogus VAT refunds. Modack's mother Ruwaida, his brother Yassine, business associates like Farid van der Schiff, all allegedly part of what prosecutors call the Modack family business. December 13, 2019. Ex-Hard Living's boss Rashid Staggy is gunned down in Cape Town. It's another gangland execution in a city drowning in them. But Modack makes a strange claim. His middleman warned him about the hit a day before it happened. Was this a boast, a threat, or evidence of police corruption so deep that even gangland hits were being leaked? The violence escalated. A security boss named Andre Naudet found his home riddled with bullets. A tow truck driver named Richard Joseph was murdered, not because he'd crossed Modack, but simply as a show of force to intimidate rivals. This wasn't business anymore. This was terror. Through it all, Modack maintained a bizarre public image. Supporters held rallies proclaiming, "Nafiz feeds the poor." Images circulated of Modack handing out food parcels in townships. Posters asked, "If Nafiz doesn't feed us, who will?" But charity couldn't wash away the blood. Lieutenant Colonel Charles Kinnear knew he was being watched. The anti-gang unit detective had been investigating Modack's empire for years. He'd received death threats. His house had nearly been attacked with a grenade in 2019. But Kinnear kept working, kept gathering evidence, kept closing in. What Kinnear didn't know was the extent of the surveillance. His phone was being tracked, illegally intercepted through corrupt cell phone company employees. Over 2,000 pings were recorded in his final weeks, every movement monitored, every location logged. Modack and his associates faced 24 counts of unauthorized cell phone interception. They didn't just track Kinnear, they tracked his family, William Booth, and anyone else who threatened their empire. Modack would later make an explosive claim in court that Kinnear and other anti-gang officers were actually extorting money from criminals, that his payments were part of an undercover sting operation. He even claimed he'd paid 40,000 rand to Kinnear personally to unblock a weapons confiscation. Kinnear's family vehemently denies these allegations. Dead men can't defend themselves. September 18, 2020. The surveillance finally serves its purpose. The hitman knows exactly when Charles Kinnear will be home, exactly when he'll be vulnerable. 18 bullets ensure there's no survival, no testimony, no more investigation. The assassination of a senior detective in broad daylight outside his own home sent shockwaves through South Africa. This wasn't just another gangland killing. This was a declaration of war against the state itself. 4 days later, Modack was arrested in Gauteng alongside several co-accused, including ex-rugby player Zane Killian. They all pleaded not guilty. But the state's case was building, brick by bloody brick. Enter Mr. A, an anonymous state witness whose testimony would blow the case wide open. Mr. A wasn't just any witness. He was a terrible West Siders gang member, a self-confessed killer already serving time. His testimony painted a picture of Modack's alleged operation from the inside. He described the botched hits on William Booth in excruciating detail. The burned getaway Mercedes after Kinnier's murder. He'd accidentally burned his own hands torching it. The casual orders to open fire on houses, to murder tow truck drivers, to send messages written in blood. According to Mr. A, Modack ran his empire with cold efficiency. Every murder a business decision, every bullet an investment in fear. But here's the problem. Mr. A is a convicted criminal testifying for a reduced sentence. The defense tears into his credibility, pointing out inconsistencies, questioning motives. How much of his testimony is truth? How much is self-serving fiction? These questions hang over the entire case like Cape Town's morning fog. June 6, 2025. After years of legal maneuvering, Modack finally faces justice, but not for murder. He's convicted of corruption for paying a police officer 146,000 rand back in 2011 to retrieve his impounded vehicles. It's a relatively minor charge compared to what's still coming, but it's a crack in the armor, proof that the untouchable can be touched. The conviction sends a message through Cape Town's underworld. If they can get Modack on corruption, what else can they prove? But Modack isn't going quietly. In court, he spins elaborate tales of conspiracy. Senior police officers, he claims, were working with rival gangsters like Liffman and Rashid Staggy to target him. He says a friend warned him that police planned his assassination. According to Modack, he's not a crime boss. He's a victim of a vast police conspiracy, a businessman caught in a web of corrupt cops and rival gangsters. The prosecution presents a different narrative: bank records, phone intercepts, witness testimony, ballistics reports. Over 120 charges including murder, attempted murder, racketeering, money laundering, and fraud. 14 co-accused, including his own mother and brother. This isn't a conspiracy against Modack. This is the unraveling of a criminal empire. As the trial progresses, the true scope of Modack's alleged operation becomes clear. This wasn't just about nightclub protection or gangland feuds. This was about systematic corruption that reached into every corner of Cape Town's economy. The VAT fraud alone, 46 million rand stolen from South African taxpayers through fake refunds. The money that allegedly flowed to corrupt cops, whether they received it or not, someone got rich off those bribes. The businesses forced to pay protection money, the families torn apart by assassination, the communities terrorized by gang violence, all of it allegedly orchestrated by a man who claimed to earn just 20,000 rand a month. Mark Liffman, Modack's former rival, would never see the trial's conclusion. In November 2024, he was shot dead in Cape Town, another casualty in the endless gang wars. Even from behind bars, even facing life in prison, the violence continues. The machine Modack allegedly built keeps grinding forward, feeding on blood and fear. October 2025 is coming. After the Kinnear murder trial concludes, Modack and his family face over 700 charges of racketeering, fraud, and money laundering in the VAT case. His mother Ruwaida, his brother Yassine, the entire Modack family empire stands accused. In Cape Town's townships, opinions remain divided. Some still see Modack as a Robin Hood figure, the man who fed the poor when the government forgot them. Others see him as what prosecutors allege, a parasite who fed off the very communities he claimed to help, who built his fortune on fear and bullets. During COVID lockdown in 2020, 7 assassination attempts were made on William Booth's life. 7. Booth survived them all, living under constant guard, a symbol of how deep the underworld's reach had become. 1 lawyer, 7 attempts, 0 accountability, until now. The state's case continues to build. Witnesses testify despite death threats. Prosecutors present evidence despite intimidation. Judge after judge refuses bail, keeping Modack and his associates locked away while justice slowly, methodically, builds its case. Today, Cape Town's underworld continues to churn. New bosses rise to fill the vacuum. Protection rackets evolve and adapt. The shadow economy that gave birth to Nafiz Modack's alleged empire still thrives in the spaces where law enforcement fears to tread. The question isn't whether Modack is guilty, that's for the courts to decide. The question is whether Cape Town can ever truly free itself from the grip of organized crime. When police officers sell guns to gangsters, when businesses must pay protection money to survive, when children grow up seeing crime as the only path out of poverty, how do you fix a system so fundamentally broken? Charles Kinnear is dead. 18 bullets made sure of that. But his investigation lives on in court documents, in testimony, in the slow grind of justice finally catching up to those who thought themselves untouchable. Modack sits in prison, awaiting his fate. The man who allegedly controlled an empire now controls nothing. The feeding schemes have ended. The nightclub protection rackets have new management. The Toyota Fortuner that was supposedly meant for a police general sits somewhere, a million-rand monument to greed and deception. Was Nafiz Modack truly Cape Town's most feared gangster? Or was he just another hustler who flew too close to the sun, who mistook fear for respect, who built an empire on sand and blood? The courts will decide his guilt. History will judge his legacy. But one thing is certain, in Cape Town's underworld, no kingdom lasts forever. They all end the same way, with handcuffs or bullets, with trials or funerals, with the slow realization that all that power, all that money, all that fear, in the end, it amounts to nothing but a cautionary tale whispered in township streets. The empire has fallen, the trials continue, and somewhere in Cape Town tonight, in the shadows of the Cape Flats, new empires are already being born. Because in a city where poverty and wealth collide, where corruption runs deeper than the roots of Table Mountain, where young men see crime as opportunity and violence as currency, the cycle never truly ends. It just waits for the next Nafiz Modack to rise, and inevitably to fall.